Professor Zilog of the Galactic Academy of Sciences regretted many things in his life, but never had he regretted anything more than underestimating the humans. "This is an insult," High Chancellor Vaux hissed, his 6 eyes narrowing at the display in front of him. The holoscreen projected what looked like a simple mathematics problem, something so basic that even a Zalvan Larvae should have been able to solve it. Yet here they were, the brightest minds in the known galaxy, utterly baffled by a single sheet of homework from a human primary school. The problem read, if a train leaves station A at 120 kilometers per hour and another train leaves station B at 50 kilometers per hour, when will they meet if station A and B are 300 kilometers apart? Vaux slammed a limb onto the table. "This is nonsense. Trains are obsolete. What relevance does this have to anything?" Zilog cleared his throat nervously. "Relevance is not the issue, Chancellor. The issue is that none of us have solved it." The chamber grew silent. The gathered scholars from all corners of the galaxy exchanged glances, their various sensory appendages twitching in shared discomfort. The humans had insisted that their children routinely solve such problems. It had been meant as a simple exchange of academic exercises between species, a gesture of goodwill. But this single sheet of homework had turned into an intellectual crisis of galactic proportions. The problem had been passed from department to department. First, the esteemed mathematicians of the Xian Collective had tried their hand at it. They abandoned the effort after 5 days, of rigorous calculations that somehow led them to the conclusion that the trains would never meet because the universe itself would collapse before they did. The Krell Dominion, renowned for their logical vision, attempted to solve it by running an advanced computational model. The result was an equation so long that it filled 3 data drives, yet it still failed to determine the meeting point of the trains. Even the AI Council, the most advanced artificial intelligences ever developed, could not agree on an answer. When given the problem, the 3 most powerful AI minds of the galaxy returned 3 completely different results before crashing entirely, prompting emergency repairs. "Perhaps the humans have lied to us," suggested Minister Groir of the Arn Union, a species known for its suspicious nature. "They may have fabricated this to humiliate us." "Unlikely," Zilog muttered. "They sent this in good faith. Their younglings solved these regularly." Vaux groaned, rubbing his upper mandibles. "Then we must find out how they do it. If their children can solve this, then we must understand their methods. Otherwise, we risk being seen as intellectually inferior." A heavy silence filled the chamber. No one wanted to admit it, but the thought had crossed everyone's mind. Humanity was already feared for its adaptability, resilience, and terrifying creativity in war. If they were also intellectually superior, it would change the balance of power in ways the Galactic Council could not afford. "Summon a human," Vaux ordered. "We will get to the bottom of this." 2 days later, a human arrived. His name was Thomas Blake, a representative of the Earth Academic Exchange Program. He was, by human standards, unremarkable, neither elderly nor particularly youthful, dressed in a simple suit with a look of mild confusion. "Gentlemen," he said, setting down his briefcase, "I understand you have a mathematical inquiry?" Zilog gestured to the holo display. "We require assistance in solving this. Your people claim this is trivial. We, however, have found it anything but." Blake glanced at the problem. Classic relative motion problem. How long have you been working on this?" 3 weeks, Vaux admitted reluctantly. Blake blinked. 3 weeks? "And we have employed the most sophisticated computational models available to us," Zilog added. Blake frowned. "Have you tried just solving it?" "If we had, we wouldn't need you here," Vaux snapped. "If you have an answer, share it." Blake pulled out a notepad and a pen. The gathered aliens stared. Most species had abandoned physical writing centuries ago. He jotted down a simple formula, muttered a few calculations under his breath, then looked up. They meet in 1.2 hours. The chamber remained silent. Vaux stiffened. Explain. Blake sighed, stepping forward. All right, so you take the total distance, 300 kilometres, and divide it by the sum of both speeds, which is 120 kilometres per hour plus 150 kilometres per hour, giving you 270 kilometres per hour. 300 divided by 270 is 1.11 hours, or roughly 1.2 hours. The alien stared at the notepad as if it contained the forbidden secrets of the universe. That cannot be correct, Minister Groir whispered. We ran trillions of simulations. Blake shrugged. Yeah, that was probably your mistake. Overcomplicating it. It's just basic algebra. Silence. Zilog looked at the gathered scientists. We must never speak of this. Blake leaned back in his chair, watching the gathered scientists struggle to process what had just happened. Their expressions varied. Some flickered between disbelief and sheer existential dread. Others scribbled furiously on their datapads as if verifying the answer might restore their shattered confidence. Zilog's mandibles clicked rapidly. You mean to tell us that human younglings can solve this problem with that? Blake shrugged. Yeah, it's just algebra. We start teaching this around age 10 or 11. Vaux's limbs twitched. And you expect us to believe that an entire consortium of the greatest intellectuals in the galaxy was undone by a formula designed for children? Blake set his pen down. I mean, yeah, you guys are overthinking this. It's just distance over speed. Groir, the Iron Union Minister, whispered, blasphemy. The murmurs in the chamber grew louder. Some of the scientists seemed to be physically struggling to reconcile their defeat. A Krell Dominion researcher, known for his composure, let out a long, rattling sigh, then simply powered down his neural interface, as if resigning from rational thought altogether. Vaux turned his gaze toward Blake. Tell me, human, if your kind is capable of solving such problems so effortlessly, then why does your civilization still engage in war, economic instability, and unpredictable governance? Blake grinned. Because intelligence doesn't always mean wisdom. Also, have you met humans? We overcomplicate simple things too, just not math. Groir looked like he wanted to evaporate into the ether. Zilog, who had been eerily quiet, suddenly leaned forward. Blake, answer me honestly. This was not a trick. There are no hidden variables, no deception. None, Blake said. I could show you another 100 examples just like it. Zilog turned to his fellow scholars. Then we must reassess our methodology. Vaux snorted. Reassess. Do you understand what this means? Humanity has developed an educational structure that outpaces the best the galaxy has to offer, and we were blind to it. Blake cut in. Hold on, I wouldn't say that. You guys are brilliant. I mean interstellar travel, artificial singularities, and Dyson spheres. These aren't things humans have perfected yet. But in terms of raw calculations, sometimes simple solutions beat complex models. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, without warning, one of the Xerian mathematicians collapsed to the floor. His colleagues rushed to his side, checking for vital signs. What happened? Blake asked, concerned. Shock, Groir muttered. His neural lattice couldn't handle the revelation. He has entered a recovery state. Blake winced. Yikes. Didn't mean to break your guy. Zilog rubbed his temples, looking more exhausted than before. The implications of this discovery could be disastrous. If this knowledge spreads, it will destabilize academic hierarchies across the galaxy. Blake frowned. Or, it could improve them. Groir exhaled sharply. We cannot allow this revelation to go unchecked. The perception that humans surpass others in problem-solving will shift political power. Certain civilizations might react aggressively. Blake's eyebrows rose. Are you saying some species might see a math problem as an act of war? You underestimate how fragile certain egos are, Vaux muttered. If humans are seen as an intellectual threat, it could provoke hostility rather than cooperation. Blake considered this. Then why not frame it differently? Use it as an opportunity to collaborate instead of compete. Zilog exchanged glances with the others. And how would you suggest we do that? Let humans teach, Blake said simply. Instead of trying to bury this, invite human mathematicians to work with your top scientists, share knowledge, refine techniques, improve together. That way, it's not about superiority, but progress. Vaux remained sceptical. Would your people even agree to such an arrangement? Blake chuckled. Are you kidding? Give us an excuse to teach aliens, and half the planet will sign up immediately. Some would do it for free, just for the bragging rights. For the first time in the entire meeting, there was no tension, only contemplation. The gathered scientists looked at one another, weighing the suggestion. The idea of collaboration instead of competition wasn't something they had considered, but it was a compelling alternative to potential galactic unrest. Zilog finally leaned back. This could work. We must draft a proposal for the Galactic Council. We will need to ensure that all parties see the benefits of cooperation. Vaux exhaled, still reluctant but unable to argue against the logic. Very well. We will discuss the possibility of academic integration, but if we see even a hint of arrogance... Blake held up his hands. No worries. I'll make sure the first batch of human teachers are humble. Well, mostly. Groar scoffed. That remains to be seen. Blake grinned. One thing's for sure, though. The next time we do an academic exchange, I'd love to see one of your toughest problems. Maybe we can learn something from you. For the first time in recorded history, an intergalactic council considered the possibility that humanity had something valuable to teach them. Blake leaned forward, tapping a pen against his notebook as he studied the room full of aliens. All right, so what happens next? Vaux sighed, his many limbs twitching. We present the proposal to the Galactic Council. Of course, the idea of collaboration is sound, but we will need to convince those who see this as a threat rather than an opportunity. Groar, ever the skeptic, growled. And if they refuse? If they decide that the knowledge humans possess is too dangerous to be shared? Blake shrugged. Then they'd be making a pretty dumb decision, but I don't think they will. Even the proudest civilizations recognize progress when they see it. Besides, you've all spent weeks trying to solve a kid's math problem and failed. If that's not humbling, I don't know what is. A heavy silence fell over the room. Blake had a point. The very fact that humanity's simplest lessons had confounded their greatest scholars meant that something had to change. Refusing to adapt would only widen the gap between them. Zilog exhaled deeply. We will present the case honestly. If the Council is wise, they will recognize that we have much to gain from learning rather than competing. And if they don't? Groar asked again. Vaux, for all his initial skepticism, surprised everyone with his response. Then we will learn anyway. If politics fails, science must not. We will form independent research teams. We will invite humans to work with us. This knowledge will not be lost. Blake grinned. Now you're thinking like a scientist. The Galactic Council convened 3 days later, a grand assembly of hundreds of species, all gathered in the central chamber to discuss what had quietly become one of the most significant academic crises in galactic history. Vaux and Zilog presented their case. They explained how an innocent academic exchange had exposed a fundamental flaw in their approach to problem solving. They detailed how human children were mastering principles that some of the galaxy's most advanced minds had struggled to comprehend. And then they made their argument, an invitation to collaboration rather than rivalry. The council listened in stunned silence. Then the debates began. Some representatives were outraged. Humanity has tricked us. This is nothing more than an elaborate ruse to assert dominance. Others were in denial. Impossible. There must be an error. We cannot be outpaced by a species so young on the cosmic stage. But then, one by one, the more pragmatic minds spoke up. If they wished to deceive us, they would have done so with greater subtlety. We must acknowledge the truth. We lack the efficiency they possess in this area. We must learn. To refuse this opportunity is to accept ignorance. I, for one, refuse to be left behind. The turning point came when the representative from the Krell Dominion, the same species that had generated a formula spanning 3 data drives to solve the problem, stood and declared, "The truth is evident. We have overcomplicated where they have simplified. We have mistaken complexity for intelligence. We must evolve." The vote was held. The decision was made. Humanity would be invited to share its knowledge in an unprecedented academic alliance. The first intergalactic education initiative was born. Within months, the greatest scientific minds of the galaxy were seated in classrooms alongside human instructors. The simple math problem that had started it all became a symbol of progress, a reminder that sometimes intelligence wasn't about the most complex solutions. It was about the right ones. Blake remained in the galactic capital, overseeing the first wave of academic exchanges. He watched as alien scholars adapted, questioned, and for the first time in a long while, learned in ways they never had before. One evening, Zilog sat beside him, watching a classroom where a human professor was explaining calculus to a group of Krell mathematicians. "It is remarkable, is it not?" "What is?" Blake asked. "That it all started with the child's homework." Blake laughed. "Yeah, well, we take education pretty seriously." Zilog clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Perhaps not seriously enough. You have always looked outward, exploring the stars. But it seems the true frontier is in the minds of your people. I wonder, what will you teach us next?" Blake smirked. "Stick around. You might just be surprised." Years passed, and the integration of human educational techniques into the Galactic Council's academic institutions bore extraordinary results. Alien civilizations that once viewed humanity with suspicion now embraced their teaching methods, leading to advancements that reshaped the scientific landscape. Blake found himself at the forefront of this intellectual renaissance. His name became synonymous with the turning point in intergalactic education, though he often insisted that he was just a middleman, connecting the right minds. Zilog, now the head of the Galactic Scientific Advancement Council, sat across from Blake in the same chamber where their journey had begun. He tapped his digits on the table. "Blake, our latest research divisions have begun tackling quantum computations using your foundational principles. We have made breakthroughs that were once thought impossible." Blake grinned. "That's great. So, what's next?" Zilog's mandibles twitched. "We were hoping you could answer that. What else can we learn from humanity?" Blake chuckled. "Well, there's always philosophy, literature, and of course more math. But if you really want to push boundaries, we should talk about human creativity. You think numbers are impressive? Wait until you see what our artists can do." As new initiatives were set in motion, it became clear that humanity had not just earned a place in the galactic community, they had changed it forever. And it had all started with a single sheet of homework.